My family has been on this road trip for the last week. We started by driving down to Denton, Texas to visit some friends of ours, Jeff and Kylie Gracier, and their kids. Back in January, they moved their whole family from Kansas City to Denton to pastor a church there, and we've been planning to visit them since they left. So we finally made it, and it was one of those visits where everybody actually enjoys each other. At least it was on our end. The kids were playing, we were swimming, riding Jeff's moped, eating ice cream. Kylie made this incredible pasta. Then somebody asks, "What time are you guys leaving tomorrow?" And immediately you feel it. Oh yeah, this ends. Suddenly you want one more night, one more morning, one more coffee, just another hour. Vacation does this to me. You can be on day 2 and already be sad it's almost over. I do this with ice cream too. I'll be 2 bites into a cone thinking, I should have gotten 2 scoops. I still have almost the whole scoop and somehow I'm already grieving its loss. After Denton, on the way home, we went to a little place called Okana. It's in Oklahoma City. It's an indoor water park. And listen, this is no Great Wolf Lodge. They didn't pay me to say this, but it's got a different color palette, different branding, and it hasn't yet developed that indoor water park smell where you're not sure if you're on vacation or, well, touring a municipal water treatment facility. But there we were. One more slide. Okay, seriously, last one. Then we stopped off at Bentonville, Arkansas on our way home. We've been going there for years, so we have our places. Flying Fish, it's this fried fish place near the square where most of the decorating budget appears to have gone toward collecting every big mouth Billy Bass ever made. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. The Momentary Kohler Park, Airship Coffee, the Walmart Museum Ice Cream Shop. And because we know what we love, I start trying to optimize it. Can we fit in one more thing? Then, in true Kindler road trip fashion, when the trip was supposed to end, we booked one more Airbnb. School starts this week, LFBI starts, fall starts filling everything back in. Summer is ending, so we stretched it one more day. And this morning I'm out paddleboarding thinking, could I get one more ride in before we leave? Me and my son go out, we drag the paddleboard all the way down to the lake just to make the most of it. And none of that is bad. Get the second scoop, ride the slide again, stay another night, but how easily does wanting to enjoy something turn into being afraid for it to end? You can be with your friends while thinking about goodbye. You can be on vacation while thinking about home. Eating the ice cream while thinking about the empty cone. And if you're not careful, you can start grieving a good thing before God has even asked you to let it go. Maybe bracing doesn't protect us from the ending. Maybe it just lets an ending that hasn't happened yet take something from what God is giving us right now. Hey, this is Jonathan, counselor at Sound Mind, professor at Living Faith Bible Institute, and a pastor right here in Kansas City at Midtown Baptist Temple. And this is Sound Mind, where we take a deeper look at life through a biblical lens. This is the final episode in our series on Stewarding the Good. We've talked about learning to notice what's good, how to deepen joy instead of constantly looking for the next thing, how to make room for what matters in our life, how to pay attention to the things in our lives that are already healthy. And last time, we talked about allowing some of the good God has given us to spill over into somebody else's life. But there's one more part of stewarding a good season that I think we need to talk about. Eventually, we have to accept that we can't make it stay. And I think that's harder than it sounds, because sometimes the moment we realize how much we love something, we also become aware of how painful it would be to lose it. So we brace. We remind ourselves that this won't last forever. We try not to get too comfortable, and we can tell ourselves that we're just being realistic. But I wonder how often what feels like preparing ourselves for the future actually keeps us from receiving what God is giving us in the present. The Bible never promises us that every good season will stay exactly the way it is. Our kids are going to grow up, our bodies are going to start to be affected by gravity, relationships move through different seasons, opportunities come and go, life changes. So the question isn't, how do I keep everything I love from changing? I think the question is, how do I love what God has given me deeply, enjoy it honestly, care for it faithfully, and still trust Him enough not to spend the whole season afraid of losing it? All right, let's talk about it. I think for me, a lot of this comes down to scarcity. The moment I realize something is limited, I start feeling pressure to get the most out of it. Am I enjoying this enough? Did we do enough? Should we stay a little longer? Is this going too fast? Which is probably why, as we were literally leaving the water park, everybody was ready to go, and I decided I needed to ride one more slide. Not with the kids. The kids weren't even tall enough to ride this one. They were standing there with Marcy waiting on me while I rode the slide by myself. Apparently this was important to them to witness. Like, kids, I know we're all tired and trying to leave, but Dad needs closure. I've apparently been doing this my entire life. I remember being a kid on Christmas evening and suddenly feeling this sadness wash over me because I realized this is now the furthest possible moment from next Christmas. Christmas had not even fully ended, and here I am, sad about it. There were still presents everywhere, food everywhere, family was still around, and my brain was already like, well, only 364 days to go. And that sounds ridiculous, but I think we do versions of that all the time. Some people get it every Sunday. Sunday afternoon starts winding down and Monday morning begins creeping into the room. People even call it the Sunday scaries. You're still technically in the weekend, but emotionally, you have already clocked in. Maybe your job is stressful. Maybe Monday really is hard for you, but now Monday gets Sunday night as well. Or maybe things are going really well in a friendship and part of you starts wondering how long it can stay this close. Somebody's probably going to move, or schedules are going to change, or kids get older, life gets busier. Or maybe it's ministry for you. It's fruitful right now. Instead of thanking God for what He's doing, you begin wondering how long the momentum will last. Or maybe it's your health. It's improved, and instead of enjoying the strength you have today, you immediately start thinking about how long your body can keep this up. And I think for some of us, it's just the instinct to squeeze everything we can out of something before it disappears and slips out of our fingers. For others, there's a deeper reason. You've had good things change suddenly. You know what it's like to get the phone call. A relationship changed, a job disappeared, your health shifted. Something you thought you had more time with ended sooner than you expected. So now, when life feels good, part of you stays ready, like for the other shoe to drop. That analogy comes from living underneath somebody who's taking their shoes off on their bed and one falls and hits the ground and you're just waiting to hear the sound of the other one hit. don't get too comfortable. Don't assume this is going to last. Don't let yourself need this too much. And I understand that instinct. There is wisdom in remembering that life changes. There is wisdom in planning. There's wisdom in knowing that no season stays exactly the same forever. But I think there's a difference between appreciating something because you know it is temporary and becoming so aware of its ending that you stop receiving it while it's here. At some point, you just stop experiencing the thing and you just start monitoring how much of it's left, how many days of vacation, how many hours in the weekend, how many summers before the kids are older. How much longer will this relationship feel like this? And maybe that is what bracing is. It's when awareness of an ending starts creating pressure in the present. We tell ourselves that we're preparing, but sometimes what we're really doing is just rehearsing grief in the middle of joy. And I'm not sure rehearsing grief actually makes us better at grieving when the time comes. I think it's more like it just makes us worse at receiving what God is giving us right now. Because the trip will end. Monday will come, kids will grow, bodies will change, relationships will move through different seasons. That is not pessimism, that's life. The question is whether I need to begin experiencing the loss before the loss is actually here. Because maybe bracing doesn't protect me from tomorrow. Maybe it just gives tomorrow permission to take something from today. I think part of what makes this difficult is that the moment we know something has an ending, we start measuring it. 3 days left, 2 days left, last night, last morning, last paddleboard ride. And sometimes not knowing almost feels easier, I think, because once I know how much is left, the countdown starts in my mind. And suddenly I'm not just enjoying the thing anymore, I'm elevating whether I'm getting enough of the amount I have left. That's one reason Ecclesiastes 7:14 has been really helpful to me as I've thought about this. It says, "In the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. God also hath set the one over against the other." And I think we can hear that word prosperity and immediately think money. Like, it's like Solomon's talking about the day your investments are doing well, but the word is much broader than an investment. It carries the idea of good, something pleasant or favorable, a day when things are going well. So you could almost hear Solomon saying, when it is a good day, receive the good, be joyful. And then he puts another kind of day beside it, a day of adversity, a day when life is difficult, things don't go the way you hoped, and Solomon's response is different. In the good day, be joyful. In the difficult day, consider, pay attention, learn. And then comes the part I think matters for this conversation we're having right now. God also has set the one over against the other. In other words, both kinds of days exist. The good day is real, the hard day is real, and neither allows you to predict with certainty what tomorrow is going to be. A good season doesn't guarantee that the next season will be good. But a difficult season doesn't mean difficulty gets the final word either. Ecclesiastes is incredibly realistic about that. This is not a book written by somebody who thinks life is predictable. Solomon is constantly reminding us that life moves. Seasons change, circumstances happen all the time. We control a lot less than we really even know, which is what makes the instruction so striking to me. Solomon knows the day of adversity exists. And he still says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful. He doesn't say, in the day of prosperity, start worrying about when adversity is coming. He doesn't say, enjoy this, but not so much that it will hurt when things change. He just lets the good day be good. And I think sometimes we have a harder time doing that than Scripture does. Maybe your marriage is in a really healthy place right now. You actually enjoy being around each other. Things that used to become arguments aren't becoming arguments. You don't need to immediately wonder how long until the next hard season. Just thank God. Enjoy your spouse. Keep tending to what is healthy. Maybe you finally have a little financial breathing room. That doesn't mean you stop budgeting. It doesn't mean you assume nothing expensive will ever happen again, but maybe this month you can breathe. Maybe your church is healthy, ministry is fruitful, your friendships feel close, your body feels strong, work is going well. There are things in your life right now that are just good. And sometimes I think we struggle to say that without immediately adding, for now. And yes, for now. Everything in life is, in some sense, just for now. But for now doesn't have to become a threat. There's a difference between preparing for what is coming and emotionally moving into it before it gets here. School really is starting. Our calendar really is going to change. There's things that I need to prepare for. That's stewardship. But I can prepare for fall without leaving summer early. Jesus says in Matthew 6, take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. That doesn't mean don't plan. Scripture has plenty to say about wisdom and preparation. The problem isn't acknowledging tomorrow. The problem is asking today to carry tomorrow too. And maybe I don't need God to tell me how long the good day is going to last before I'm willing to receive it. Maybe I don't need a guarantee that something will stay before I'm allowed to thank God that it's here. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. Not because adversity will never come. The verse itself tells us that it will, but because this is the day God has actually given you. And faithfulness to tomorrow doesn't require you to leave today early. I think one of the reasons endings are hard is that we can start treating temporary as if it means incomplete. Like if something was really good, we are prone to want one more. Concerts are a really clear example of this. You get to the end of the show, the band walks off, everybody knows what happens next, right? One more song, one more song. One more song. And listen, most of the time the band has already planned the encore. The guitars are still plugged in, the lights are ready. There are 3 songs left on the set list. They're coming back whether you chant or not, which is honestly a little cheesy. It's like painful to watch when the crowd doesn't really ask for it. The band's backstage like, give it another 30 seconds, they'll want us. And the crowd is already looking for the parking lot. But when it is a great show, you do want one more song, and eventually they play it. Then afterwards, the lights come on, the concert is over, and nobody says, well, that was pointless. It only lasted 2 hours. It was good precisely as the thing it was. It had a beginning, it had an ending, and somewhere between those two things, it was complete. I think that's a helpful way to think about seasons in our lives. Ecclesiastes 3 says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." There is a time for things to begin. There's a time for things to change, and sometimes there's a time for something good to become something different. When I look back over my life, there's so many seasons like that. My years in Maryville, Missouri, go Bearcats, at Northwest Missouri State, working for the Chiefs as Casey Wolf, working the front desk at Parkway Towers, this condominium on the plaza here in Kansas City, being a foster parent. Every season is meaningful. These seasons shaped me in ways that I didn't understand while I was living in them, but none of them needed to become permanent in order to matter. And I think friendships are one of the harder places to accept this. There are friends who in previous seasons of my life I walked with every day. We were constantly around each other. We knew what was happening in each other's lives because we were actually there for most of it. And these people are still incredibly dear to me, but we don't get to be together day to day anymore. That change can be genuinely sad. It doesn't mean the friendship failed. It doesn't mean what we shared was less real. Life changed. Responsibilities changed, geography changed, the shape of the relationship changed. I have friends who have experienced this in much more painful ways. People who gave years of their lives to the mission field, and then suddenly a visa was revoked, a government changed, a door closed, and then within weeks or even days, a life they thought they were continuing had become a season they were looking back on. That's real grief, but the ending of an assignment doesn't erase the faithfulness that happened inside of it. And I've had to remind myself of that because I am painfully nostalgic. It is painful. If I could gather everybody I've ever loved into one room and somehow make all of our relationships feel exactly like they did during their best seasons, I probably would. If I could get all my friends together and make everybody go roller skating like it's 1997 again, I would. I actually have. That is not theoretical. When it's my birthday, we do what I want, and I want to go roller skate. And listen, I know that sounds insane, but I think there's something good about remembering. There's something good about looking back and saying, God was kind to me there. Those people matter. That season mattered. But nostalgia can quietly move from gratitude into this belief that the best version of life is behind us. Then we start trying to recreate what God may have intended us to just remember. We want the old friend group back exactly as it was. We want to get the band back together. We want the church to feel like that one season. We want the kids to stay at that age when everything felt especially sweet. We want the role or the team or the place or the rhythm, and I don't know, maybe part of receiving a season faithfully is allowing it to be complete without requiring it to be permanent. That doesn't mean change won't hurt. Sometimes you really are losing something. But change doesn't only ask, what am I losing? It can also ask, what is God giving me now? A child grows and you lose one version of that relationship, but you also get to know the person they are becoming. A friendship is similar. It changes and maybe you lose daily proximity, but the history, the love, the influence of the person doesn't disappear. A ministry assignment closes, but faithfulness there can become preparation for whatever comes next. A season can end without becoming defined as a failure in your mind. Something can be over without it becoming wasted. You don't have to keep yesterday alive to prove yesterday was good. A season can be complete without it being permanent. I think this is where the idea of stewardship becomes really important, because a steward is not an owner. A steward is a manager. You've been given something to care for, to tend to protect, to use faithfully. But being responsible for something is not the same thing as being in control of what ultimately happens to it. When I was in grad school, I worked at this place called Parkway Towers. It's this high-end condominium high-rise on the plaza here in Kansas City. And listen, I took a lot of pride in this job. I loved it. It was crazy. It felt like a Wes Anderson film, all the unique personalities that lived in the building. I loved getting to know everyone there. I loved taking care of the building. I vacuumed the foyer and the parlor. I received everybody's packages. I held the door for people coming through the lobby. I tried to know all the tenants' names, and I knew their families and their grandkids. It was great. There was this one tenant with Down syndrome. His name was Lee, who became a close friend of mine. He would sneak down to the vending machine and buy candy that he wasn't supposed to eat. It'd make him sick to have gluten. So we had this whole system that he wasn't fully participating in, where I knew what kinds of treats I could trade him for the candy he was getting. He'd always try to sneak past me, but he always looked so guilty. Lee, hand over the Swiss cake rolls. You know you can't have gluten. He would say, fine. He'd stomp over. I'd hand him the gluten-free treats I bought him at Whole Foods, and he would be off to his unit. I cared about that place. I cared about the people who lived there. I could tell you story after story of all the relationships I built there. I wanted the lobby to look good. I wanted the people to feel known when they walked through it. But I didn't own Parkway Towers. Nobody was coming down to the front desk asking Jonathan what direction we should take the facility. I had responsibility, but there were decisions that simply did not belong to me. And I think there's something important about understanding that distinction in the things that we love the most. Your marriage, your children, your friendships, your ministry, your health, your career, the people you're trying to help. You may have enormous responsibility in those areas. And stewardship means you take that responsibility seriously. It doesn't mean, well, God is in control, so I guess none of this really matters. A good steward cares. A good steward invests. A good steward pays attention, but a good steward also eventually reaches the boundary between what has been entrusted to him and what belongs to the owner. I experience that all the time in my counseling relationships. I can listen, I can ask questions, I can tell somebody the truth, I can pray for them, I can care deeply about what happens next, but I can't repent for them. I can't make them forgive. I can't make marriages reconcile or for someone to choose what's right. There's a point where love continues, but our control ends. Foster care taught us that big time. You can bring a child in your home. You can love them like they're yours. You get attached to them. You care for them like they belong to you, and still know that some of the biggest decisions about what's happening next for them aren't yours to make. And I think sometimes our response to that level of vulnerability is to pull back. Maybe if I don't attach quite as much, that won't hurt as much. Maybe if I remind myself this could change, I can keep some emotional distance. But open hands are not numb hands. Surrender doesn't mean caring less so that losing something hurts less. It means Carrying and stewarding something faithfully without pretending that loving it gives me ownership of the outcome. James 4 talks about it like this. People who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. They have a plan. There's nothing particularly strange about the plan. The problem is the certainty underneath it. James says, ye know not what shall be on the morrow. And then, for that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. That's not an argument against planning. It's an argument against confusing a plan with control. We make plans, we build marriages, we raise our kids, we serve churches and invest in friendships. We take care of our bodies, we make appointments for next year. And underneath all of it is this quiet recognition. If the Lord wills. I am the steward, I'm not the owner. And that doesn't mean that when something changes, you should not grieve. Grief is not evidence that you failed to surrender. I think sometimes Christians can almost make people feel guilty for hurting deeply. Like if you really trusted God, maybe you wouldn't be this devastated. But gratitude and grief can exist in the same place. You can say, God, thank you for giving me this. And at the same exact time, God, I hate that this is changing. Those can both be true. I would rather arrive at the end of a season grieving because I loved deeply than realize I spent the entire thing withholding myself because I was afraid of how much the ending might hurt. Maybe the goal is not to love things less so that they hurt less when they change. Maybe it's to love them faithfully while they are ours to steward, and trust the owner with what happens next. If you've ever left an Airbnb with kids, you know checkout somehow takes about 3 times longer than it should. You're gathering all the dirty towels, you're loading the dishwasher, you're taking out the trash, turning off every light, checking under the bed for shoes and chargers, trying to remember what was already broken when you got there and what your children may have personally contributed to the property, right? Meanwhile, the kids are half-dressed, asking for snacks, and actively dismantling whatever Marcy and I just finished cleaning. I was out in the garage, hanging the paddleboards back up, putting everything back where it belonged, and at some point I remember thinking, okay, that was enough. It's time to go home. And I don't mean that like I was tired of the trip. It had been really good. We got to be with people we love. We swam, we ate really good food, we rode water slides, we went to places our family loves. We stretched summer one more day. But eventually, you have to stop asking for one more song. The lights come on, you gather your stuff, you go home. And I can honestly say, I'm excited about what's next. School is starting. LFBI is starting. Fall rhythms are coming back. There are things that God has waiting for us in the next season too. Maybe that's part of what I've been learning through this whole series. We start by talking about letting the good actually land, then deepening the joy, making room for what matters, tending to what is healthy, letting some of the good spill over into somebody else's life, and now, finally, learning to receive it all without believing we have to make it stay. So maybe there's something good in your life right now that you find yourself afraid of losing. A relationship, your health, a season with your family, a friendship, a job you love, a ministry that feels fruitful, some stability you haven't had in a while. First, I want to challenge you just to name it. what is good right now? Say it out loud. Then I want to challenge you to receive it. Do something this week that allows you to simply enjoy it. Not trying to improve it, not maximize it, not figure out how to make it last longer. Just be there. And then I want to challenge you to release it. Maybe even open your hands and pray. God, thank you for this. I really love it. Help me receive it fully while it's here. Help me care for it faithfully without believing I have to control what happens next. And when this season changes, help me to trust you there too. Stewarding the good was never about making the good last. It was about learning to receive whatever God places in your hands faithfully while it's there. Eventually, the Airbnb gets cleaned, the paddleboards get put away, everybody gets in the van, you lock the door and pull away. And maybe instead of immediately wishing for one more day, you can simply look back and say, that was really good. Thank you, God. And then drive toward whatever He gives you next. If something came to mind while you were listening, maybe don't rush to fix it. Just notice what you're holding tightly. What are you afraid you're not enjoying enough? What are you trying to make last? What would it look like to receive it today? Care for it faithfully and trust God with what happens next. And if you're in a season where change or loss feels especially difficult, talk with someone who can walk with you through it. A wise pastor, a mature friend, someone who knows you well enough to help you separate what is yours to steward from what you're trying to control. If you or someone you love needs more structured help, you can reach out to us at Sound Mind. We'd love to help find biblical counseling for you near you. You can go to soundmind.live. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. We're always posting throughout the week. And listen, if this series has been helpful, take a minute and rate and review the show. It really does help people find their way here. Okay. And if you want more biblical conversations like this, check out the Postscript. You can search the Postscript wherever you listen. And if you want to know more about the Bible, or maybe you want to be a pastor or a missionary, check out Living Faith Bible Institute at lfbi.org. Thanks for walking through Stewarding the Good with me. Until next time, take care.